I never thought a simple, dusty metal box buried under a rotting porch would be the thing that turned my world upside down. But looking back, I realized that some secrets are buried for a reason. Have you ever wondered what you would do if you went from having nothing, literally wondering where your next meal was coming from, to having more money than you could spend in 10 lifetimes? Would it fix your life, or would it just highlight all the cracks that were already there? I'm telling you this because I need to know if I handled this the right way, or if the greed that followed was my fault for letting it out into the light. Tell me, if you were drowning in debt and found a literal king's ransom, would you share it with the people who treated you like dirt, or would you let them stay in the gutter? To understand the sheer scale of what happened, you have to understand the level of misery we were living in. My family didn't just live in a bad house. We lived in a monument to failure. Our town was a place where dreams went to die, a gray, industrial graveyard where the only thing that grew was resentment. My father, a man who once had broad shoulders and a laugh that could shake the walls, had been reduced to a shadow. After the mill shut down, he spent his days staring at the television, not even watching it, just staring at his own reflection in the glass, wondering where it all went wrong. My mother was the only thing keeping the roof over our heads, and even that was literal. She worked 3 jobs, scrubbing the floors of the people who looked down on us, coming home with hands so cracked and bleeding that she couldn't even hold a fork. I was 22 and I felt like I was 80. I worked double shifts at a gas station, breathing in fumes and dealing with the scum of the earth, just so I could bring home $60 a day to put into the survival jar on the counter. Every cent went to my sister Maya's medical bills. Maya was the light of our lives, but that light was fading because we couldn't afford the specialist she needed for her degenerative condition. We were the trash of the neighborhood. The Whitmores lived in the big Victorian house 3 doors down. Mr. Whitmore was a local success story, owning a string of hardware stores. He would walk his purebred dog past our house every morning, and if a piece of trash had blown from our bin onto his sidewalk, he'd ring our bell just to watch my tired mother apologize and pick it up. He called us a cancer on the property value. He lobbied the city to fine us for our peeling paint, knowing damn well we were choosing between paint and Maya's medicine. He wasn't just mean. He was calculated in his cruelty. He wanted us gone so he could buy our plot for pennies and extend his garden. This went on for years, the sneers, the insults, the calculated isolation. Then came that Tuesday. The rain wasn't just falling, it was punishing. The old wooden porch, which had been groaning for a decade, finally surrendered. A massive section of the floorboard snapped, revealing the dark, wet crawlspace beneath. My dad looked at it and just sat down on the mud and cried. That was the breaking point for me. I told him I'd fix it. I crawled into that hole with a flashlight and a rusted shovel, my heart full of a cold, hard rage at the world. I was digging into the wet earth to create a level base for some support beams when the shovel hit something that didn't sound like stone or wood. It was a dull metallic thud. I thought it was an old pipe, but as I cleared the mud, I saw the corner of a steel chest. It was locked with a heavy, rusted mechanism, and it felt like it weighed 100 pounds. It took me 4 hours of back-breaking labor, covered in filth and spiders, to drag that thing into the kitchen. When we pried it open, the air in the room changed. It wasn't just gold. Though there were hundreds of heavy, high-purity coins, it was the documents. Folded neatly in waterproof casing were bearer bonds and stock certificates for a company that had been a pioneer in telecommunications back in the 1950s. We didn't know it then, but that company had been swallowed by a global conglomerate, and those certificates had been splitting and gaining value for half a century. We spent that entire night in a trance. We didn't eat. We didn't sleep. We just touched the gold, feeling its unnatural warmth. The next day, I didn't go to the gas station. I took one coin to a city 4 hours away, sold it for $5,000, and hired the most expensive legal firm in the state. For 3 weeks, we lived a double life. We still wore our rags. We still let Mr. Whitmore yell at us about the lawn. But behind closed doors, we were talking to bankers and estate lawyers. When the final audit came in, the lawyer's voice actually trembled. He told us that between the bonds, the compound interest, and the dividends from the stock, the total value was over $2.4 billion. We went from wondering if we could afford milk to being wealthier than most small countries. The first thing we did was get Maya a private medical jet. We told the neighbors she was going to a state-funded clinic. But secrets like that have a way of leaking. A local clerk saw the wire transfers. Within 48 hours, the poor family was the talk of the town. It was like a switch flipped. The same people who used to cross the street to avoid us were now lining up at our door. The local priest, who had never once offered us a food basket, came by to talk about the virtues of tithing. The mayor, who had signed the citations against our house, came over with a box of expensive cigars for my dad. It was the most disgusting display of human greed I had ever witnessed. They didn't even apologize for the years of abuse. They just acted like we had always been best friends. Mr. Whitmore was the worst. He actually had the nerve to ask my father for an investment of $10 million to save the local economy by expanding his stores. He stood in our living room, smelling of expensive cologne, acting like he hadn't spent the last decade trying to get us evicted. So that's the situation I was in. I was standing in the middle of a literal swarm of parasites who had spent their entire lives making sure we knew we were lesser. And now they wanted us to save them. I had to decide. Do I use this money to be the bigger person and revitalize this dying town? Or do I use it to show them exactly what it feels like to be at the mercy of someone who doesn't care if you live or die? Before I tell you the absolute destruction I rained down on this town, and how I finally broke the Whitmores, I want you to pause and comment below. If you had been treated like garbage for 20 years, and suddenly you held the keys to everyone's future, would you be a saint, or would you be a judge? Tell me what you would have done in my shoes before you hear the rest. I chose to be the judge. I realized that giving these people money would only validate their cruelty. It would teach them that they could treat people like dirt, and still get a payday if that person got lucky. I told my family to pack their essentials, and we moved into a high-security hotel in the city, but I wasn't done with that town. I instructed my legal team to set up a shell company. Over the next 6 months, we quietly bought every single piece of commercial debt in that town. We bought the local bank's loan portfolio. We bought the mortgages of the town council members. We bought the land titles for the main street. I didn't want their money, I wanted their souls. I waited until the day the Whitmores were hosting their annual garden gala. The event they always used to flaunt their wealth while we sat in the dark because our electricity had been cut. I walked into that party uninvited. Mr. Whitmore tried to have me removed, laughing and telling the guests that the lottery winner has lost his mind. I just smiled and handed him a legal document. I told him, I don't just own your house, Robert. I own the land your stores sit on. I own the debt your brother owes to the bank. And as of 9 o'clock this morning, I've called in every single one of those loans. The color didn't just leave his face, it was like his whole spirit collapsed. He started begging. He talked about his family, his legacy. I just looked at him and said, I remember when you told my mother that her legacy was a messy yard and a broken porch. I guess your legacy is a for sale sign. I did the same to the mayor. I did the same to the grocer who used to humiliate us. I didn't evict everyone. I'm not a monster, but I made them all my tenants. I turned the town into a cooperative where the lower-class workers were given the ownership of the businesses they worked in. I fired the managers who were cruel and replaced them with the people they had stepped on. I stripped the Whitmores of everything. I bought their house and turned it into a free clinic for people with Maya's condition. And I made sure the plaque at the front mentioned that it was built on the ruins of greed. We left that town in our rearview mirror, moving to a place where no one knew our names. My parents are finally happy. My dad has his laugh back, and my mom's hands have finally healed. But sometimes at night I still think about that box. I think about how close we were to dying in that mud. It taught me that money isn't just currency, it's a mirror. It shows you exactly who you are when you think no one can stop you. I am proud of what I did. I didn't just become a billionaire. I became a lesson. Finding that money didn't change who we were. It just gave us the power to show everyone else who they really were. It taught me that loyalty is easy when things are good, but the people who stand by you when you're digging in the mud are the only ones who deserve to sit at your table when the feast is served. Like this video if you were on my side and think the neighbors got what they deserved. Subscribe for more stories like this where the underdog finally wins. And share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. Did I go too far with the revenge? Or was it long overdue? I'll see you all in the next story.